Margaret Kuhlman of Soul Astrology. This new moon is at 19 degrees Taurus, with Mercury just behind at 17, the South Node at 16, and Mars at 14.5. So we've already been feeling the Taurus strength over the last couple of weeks. At first, after the last full moon, all those planets would have opposed Saturn, who's in the same sign as the North Node. So even then the settling and relaxation and slowing down that one gets in Taurus would have felt somewhat uncomfortable, in that Saturn is requiring us to move, to change our ways of doing things, to pull ourselves more into the depth, the inner awareness that Scorpio requires, the awareness and sensitivity. And just before the new moon, so this first week of May, the planets trined Pluto and then sextiled Chiron. So there's a ripple feeling of circumstances seeming to force us to change. We don't change, especially the Taurus aspect of our nature, which is our physicality, our survival instinct, all of that. We don't change unless we have to. There's a digging one's heels in, because what you know feels safe. But the circumstances of our lives, I don't know if you've been noticing this too, are such that we have to change. And because it's a trine aspect to Pluto, the blue line, and a green, the sextile to Chiron, it's as though we are choosing to change. We know that we need to. So it's like heaving ourselves out of our patterns and trying something new. Instead of turning away and hiding in silence, there's an opening up, a sense of needing to share, and finding that when we do these things differently from how we instinctively felt we wanted to, that actually the results are healing. In this new moon chart, on the 9th or 10th of May, depending which part of the world you're in, Venus has just moved into Gemini, Venus being how we relate, what feels comfortable. So it's as though we are moving towards a desire to communicate, and that communication can be light. So even though we may have been gathering quite deep and difficult inner stuff, it's as though there will be ways of communicating it which are light and easier. It's not that we should ignore those deeper layers. As long as the North Node's going through Scorpio, what works best is to own up to what's deep. Saturn, also in Scorpio, is kind of ensuring that we do this for this couple of years, that it's there. But there's nothing like the ability to smile or see the funny side of things, or just recognise that emotions flow through, and how you feel today is not necessarily how you'll be feeling tomorrow. Gemini, open to change, prepared to adapt, flexible. The thing which stands out for me, as an Aries person myself, is that the Uranus in Aries is coming up to being exactly square to Pluto, which puts it at odds with all the rest of the planets. So going it alone feels like a pretty poor option. It's as though if we try, we'll see that it's purely a survival of our ego position, an attempt to survive. We will feel a bit silly, I think, trying to stand clear of everyone else, and definitely inwardly somewhat lonely and cut off. As Venus moves through Gemini quite quickly, so those first few days after the new moon, she will be squaring Neptune, a tendency perhaps to be a bit idealistic, but incredibly sensitive to other people's feelings. This only becomes a real problem when we interpret those feelings according to how we would feel, according to what would have created those feelings in us. So throughout this chart, I think in several places one would say absolutely check to see what's real, to see whether people actually do feel the way you think they feel. Check it out. One of the things of coming from the south node, when the moon is right on it and we get this eclipse effect, is that, especially in Taurus, there is this sense of being all those habit patterns. This is the way I am, I can't change, that kind of attitude. And when we do this, what's happening, our instinctive reactions, are coming from past experience, which means that we're not really seeing who's there. So we're kind of relating to people we knew before, not to the people we know now. And only by recognizing what past situation or person has just risen in us, some unfinished business somewhere that left a mark, and we take that away from the person we're actually looking at, that we actually get to see the person, the situation, for what it really is now. We're unable to relate to people if we're thinking that they're different from how they really are. So with all that Taurus on the south node, we really need to keep checking that circumstances and people may be different from what we're expecting. And you can pretty much rely on it being somewhat better than you fear. The other thing that we are having to accept, coming from the Taurus position and looking towards Scorpio, is that actually the changes that have to be made can only come about when we change ourselves inwardly, which in a way Taurus really doesn't want to know. But what that means is that we need to search for our security, for what helps us to feel secure, much deeper than our supposed characteristics and our possessions and our living circumstances. We need to look deeper for our security. The more we follow the rooting down into the earth, the more we find that all over the world the rootings go towards the centre. We are rooted in being human beings, all of us. So it's our common humanity that is our connection. That's our security. Simply to recognize that each person you meet actually wants to be happy. That everybody, anyone you meet, feels hungry from time to time and needs to sleep at night. That we all love our children and want the best for them. By the time we reach the full moon, it has been halfway round the zodiac and entered Sagittarius. So the Sun is at the beginning of Gemini, and Venus, Mercury and Jupiter are all together in Gemini. So the Taurusness gradually fades out as we get towards the full moon, and the second half of the month is very, very much about communicating, and perhaps still aiming for truth rather than imagining that ideals can be brought to earth in one go, or that our fears, our worst fears, are happening. That double square to Neptune suggests that we might try being a bit Pollyanna about life, but equally it can be exaggerating and making mistakes about one's fears. Whereas in fact, in this second half, after the full moon, if we surrender to how our spirit seems to be moving us through life, or what our spirit is presenting us in our life, we will find that the right things can happen, because Saturn will have retrograded into a beautiful trine with that Neptune, as you see the blue line across, so that Neptune will be the way to discover what will work, and Neptune as a guide is like our angel, our own spirit. It leads us like our spirit. So the second half of the month is a wonderful mix of the light-hearted playfulness of sun and moon, while resting on the spiritual firmness, that depth that perhaps we will have been discovering in the first half. There is a lovely website I would like to connect you to, a beautiful spiritual connection to nature through words, images and music played on the harp. if you would like to explore it. It's www.spiritualharp.com. I hope you enjoy it. The contemplation follows. Love the earth, the mighty trees. Love your food and lying down to sleep. Love the morning light, be it golden or grey. Love the water when washing, when drinking, when watering plants. Love the sky and the clouds. Love the rain and the wind. Love the birds as they sing. Let them take your heart high to their nests. Love the mountains and hills and the breadth of plains. Love the grass and the flowers and brambles and fruit. Love your hands. Love your eyes, all they see. Love your feet and your path through life. Love your tears and your inner child and the wisdom of your years. Love your heart that it beats. Love your soul in silence. Just love.